Over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay, cool.
We coming from WSU.
So y'all work at the university there?
Actually, do there.
Oh.
Hello all, and welcome back to Mind Juice. I wanted to share a few things I found interesting and further that I'm curious about related to the body cams and 2 police stops on Bryan that took place in Indiana back on December 15th. As we know, in the PCA, it only cites the one stop in Hancock County, Indiana, which we know as the stop wherein we can hear and see conversation taking place between Bryan, his father, as well as the officer. So I was curious as to why there were 2 known stops, yet only one cited in the affidavit. Further, both being within the same state when they traveled from Washington all the way to Pennsylvania throughout their entire trip. It was kind of odd to me that they got pulled over twice, which apparently was within a distance of less than 20 miles. Yet there's no other pullovers that we know of the rest of the 30 some hours it would take. So my first thought was, why the time elapse? And further, what did Bryan and his dad do from 10:45 to 3:50 p.m. in Hancock County? Because there was a 5-hour and 8-minute layover in between the stops. Now, the first stop takes place in Hancock County at approximately 10:42 a.m., which we can see presented by the utility brand cam. There's a black Chevy SUV, which is labeled with Sheriff. The officer is wearing a brown outfit, which is consistent with Sheriff, pulled over for tailgating, he references, following too closely to a van. He asks the driver, which is Bryan, for his driver's license, but not his registration. He looks at the driver's license, holds it for a while amidst conversation, and then eventually hands it back. At one point, he asks Bryan, "Is this your car?" Bryan says, "Yeah." Dad is swift to discuss WSU, SWAT, and mass shooting, which is rather odd. It kind of came out of nowhere, which I won't get into that here. Now, on the second cam, we see it takes place at 15:50 military time. Central, I believe, is where this is located, time zone. Will be approximately 3:50 p.m. In the second stop, we do not see a county listed or referenced in the cam, only that the stop was being orchestrated by a state trooper, an Indiana State Police officer. Further, we know that this time is accurate for the body cam that this officer is wearing matches the dash cam, both approximately 15:50 p.m. Now, further in regards to the second stop, if you take a look here, I noticed in the footage, before being pulled over, the officer kind of wades and kind of next to the white Hyundai Elantra, determining whether or not he's going to pull him over. Just as they are pulling over, when the officer moves over and gets behind him, you can get a glimpse of the county road signage on the side of the road, which, when zoomed in and clarified, reads Henry County. Not being from Indiana, I was curious where this county line was and is in contrast to Hancock County, where the first stop took place. Apparently, they are right next door to one another, and given that we see the white Hyundai Elantra pass the Henry County sign, to me this would suggest he was just passing over and into Henry County. Now, if you look at the map, this would then imply that they were still in Hancock County up until that point, the same county as the first stop. Through a little bit of research, I kind of wanted to get an idea of how big the county was. It would take roughly 23 minutes to travel through Hancock if driving from one side straight through all the way to the other. 23 minutes. And further, if you drove from Hancock all the way through Henry, which did not take the place here, but just to give you an idea, would take about an hour. Okay. So with that said, it can be deduced that Bryan and his dad traveled a max of 20 miles in between stops. However, there was a 5-hour and 8-minute gap in between the stops. What did they do during this time? It's not like they got a hotel in the middle of the night or middle of the day. I believe they would have referenced having just stopped to rest, not his dad immediately jumping to a SWAT mass shooting conversation that apparently took place in Washington. Why is the second stop not logged in the PCA? Was it because it has little evidentiary value in this case, i.e. no face cam, low audible, can kind of really hardly tell what they're saying? Or was it because the officer never actually reviewed his driver's license and or registration despite asking for it? Which is odd to me. It's almost like once Bryan told him, "Oh, already got pulled over," like that was enough for the officer to like believe him, which would never happen. It's almost like the officer was like kind of tipped off by what he said. "Oh yeah, we got pulled over by an SUV." It's almost kind of like the officer knew that I'm not aware of that, but technically that means there's some type of surveillance, and he kind of backed off from the situation, not even asking for the driver's license or the registration a second time, never even viewing it. Just believing their story and then wishing them a good day. Was it not included in the PCA because it wasn't logged or filed as a traffic stop? Apparently, him stating having already been pulled over was enough for the Indiana State Police officer to believe them and not bother. So in the second stop, crossing over into Henry County, as I had showed you, takes place with an unmarked Dodge Charger. He does ask for the driver's license registration, but never reviews it, okay? And then you can hear him state at one point, "When you were driving by me, you were a little close to that semi there." Kind of like the first one. He was a little too close to the van there. And then when Bryan tells him that he gets pulled over again, he states, "You got stopped by a trooper? We don't have SUVs." Which, to me, is he's a trooper, and he's inquiring if they were stopped by another trooper. And he said, "No, it was an SUV." Bryan did. And then the officer says, "Oh, it must have been a county guy." And Bryan said it was also for following too closely. And then the officer just believes the situation. No registration, no ID. Okay, I'm not going to give you another ticket or warning if you've already got stopped. I mean, apparently you just say that and you're good to go. Not really, I'm just saying. And the officer proceeds to go on and elaborate as far as the distance, and he says it's a car length per 10 miles per hour. So at 7 car lengths is what Bryan should be at for 70 miles per hour, the speed zone. So at 10 miles per hour, you're supposed to be one car length away, 22 all the way up. He was going 70. He's letting Bryan know that it didn't appear that he had 7 car lengths in between, which to me, I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, if he's within 2 or 3 at 70, yes, that's a problem. But if you look at the video yourself, I mean, does it appear that he's following it too closely? To me, it doesn't. Not at first glance, to be honest with you. And then the officer makes the joke about how, "Oh, you guys are on a long haul. You scared of planes?" Laughing. Now, at this point, from Bryan's perspective, he had to be taken a little bit off guard, being pulled over 2 times in a 20-mile radius for following too closely. The first officer asked him if that was his car, but if you think about it, when the officer initially runs your plate, it gives him all the information. He would have known the name, he would have known the registration, the owner, he would have known all that. After Bryan handed over his driver's license, more towards the end of the convo, the officer asks him, "Is this your car?" Like I said, he'd already have known that. He would have known already by running the plates. It's almost like he wanted to get him on record stating it or confirming that they had positive confirmation or ID as to where the suspect was. So this is my opinion, okay? And hopefully I don't cause any issues by publishing this, but further, Bryan had to have become aware at this point that the white Hyundai Elantra and the out-of-state plates Washington stuck out. I mean, the officer reveals in an indirect way this is why. I mean, you have separate plates. Definitely would be cheaper to fly. Coupling that up with him eventually stating over that he worked at WSU, which, I mean, I would like to think that every state trooper in the U.S. was aware of the bolo that was out for the white Elantra. I don't know. This had to cause panic for Bryan, or maybe not. I mean, To me, if I was sitting in that thing, I think I would be a little suspicious. Like, what the hell? That's a little weird. And the fact that the second officer didn't ask for any form of ID, or he did, but he never followed through and looked at it. He just took them at their word. Which to me reveals that the second officer kind of realized, like, I have no idea what's going on, but maybe he stepped on a line, maybe he shouldn't have, and kind of backed off. Now, I looked into the legality of following too closely, and in my opinion, it appears to be a generic go-to probable cause reason to pull someone over. So, bullshit, pretty much. Not necessarily. I'm support Blue. I believe they deserve all the funding for training, and have you not. I'm not going to get into that. But the statute states reasonable and prudent, which means making careful and sensible decisions, safety, etc. Now, in my opinion, this is extremely vague and solely premised upon discretion, which the officer in any situation is going to have the upper hand simply because of their job and the role that they have. Okay? So if you look and watch the video, you can see how far back Bryan was in the second pullover. Now, I can't assert that this is 7 car lengths, but look at this dashboard cam taken of the second stop, instead paying attention to the road and cars passing by on the left side. I can't even count how many instances wherein vehicles are less than 7 car lengths apart. Further, all those that stormed by and did not attempt to get over into the left lane, which, by the way, is now a law that you must attempt to get over reasonably if you see someone stranded on the side of the road, hazard lights on, a semi, police says someone pulled over. You understand that. If you see something coming up in your front, you're supposed to try to get over to the left side to give room, right? This happens over and over and over. But yet, Bryan gets pulled over for being what appears to be, 6.5 car lengths behind this semi? So what is my point in all of this? I guess I don't really know what any of this means. I am perplexed as to why only one of the stops is in the PCA, and further, even more curious as to what Bryan and his dad did that 5 hours approximately in between that one county, Hancock, in Indiana. Maybe they had someone tracking them, and like, for instance, the first stop was kind of just a check-in. They got the reading from Loma, Colorado, okay, check in Indiana to kind of make sure a suspect's still there, keep an ID on them. And then maybe they do that every so often. That way they don't follow him the entire way, but they have like checkpoints, because you can see he's on Interstate 70. So that would mean then what's the next state over, you have an approximately, okay, he'll be, passing us roughly in about, 2, 3, 4 hours. And then that time surpasses. In that next checkpoint's like, we haven't seen him come through. What's the status on that? There's been nothing traveling. So then you signal in the second one to see why the same Hyundai Elantra is still in Hancock. See if it's still the same vehicle. Check in to see the welfare of it. Is he still kind of clueless? You understand what I'm saying? But either way, the most intriguing thing to me is the fact that Bryan and his dad were in Hancock County, Indiana, on December 15th from 10:45 a.m., which I'm estimating is the end of the first traffic stop, and are not seen crossing over until into Henry County, Indiana, which is the exact next county over from Hancock. 5 hours and 8 minutes later. What did they do for that time in Hancock, Indiana? I mean, that's a rather long lunch if you ask me. Who knows? Interesting, though. And then further, that the second stop is not on the probable cause, so it's almost as if it never happened. It's almost like they're trying to shove it under. I don't know. And then it also makes me think, like, if I ever get pulled over and the reason is because I'm following too closely, my red flag's going to go off and be like, is that really probable cause? I don't know. I feel like it's just a go-to. But, alrighty. I know there's a hearing tomorrow morning. That should be interesting. Hope everyone's doing well. Until next time, take care, everybody.